The door shattered inward, propelled by a thermocast cap boot worn by a veteran militiawoman. "Home guard, on your knees!" Militiawoman Hella Chenk roared into the open room. With practiced ease, she stepped inside, allowing her companion to sweep in after, flashlight and handgun up and tracking. "This is the Boston Home Guard," Detective John Smith shouted out in English, fulfilling his part of the breach. "Drop your weapons and get on your knees, now." A handful of shore blinked at them. A set of omnislates, miscellaneous electronics, and blocks of something the EOD ladies would love to get their hands on, resting on the table between them. There was a split-second pause before one of the idiots went for something. Hella didn't blink, nailing the shield across the chest with a spread of non-lethal bolts from her compact rifle, as her partner danced the laser pointer attached to his large handgun across the remaining shield's bodies. As the one Hella shot fell to the floor in a groaning heap, the remaining three put their hands up and began to kneel. Militiawoman Hella caught the bottle of water John threw to her in an underhand toss. "I wondered why you went back to the truck." "Hey, it's somewhere in Boston. It's hot," the detective replied, taking a drink from his own bottle. "I don't know about you, but door kicking is thirsty work. I also went and grabbed some of the scanner bits. Hopefully we'll be able to tag what EOD needs to look for." EOD indeed. Hella had brought up her helmet's IED scanner after the breach, activating a simple program to search for a handful of key chemical markers. Not useful for anything but getting an alarm if something enters your helmet's sensor range. She instantly had everyone vacate the house. It was coated with explosives residue. I know the building was insulated with high X, or the shield company being read their rights had doused the entire place with ANFO. Honestly, by the smell, either was possible. "Is it just me, or does it feel weird to kick down shield doors and find terrorists?" John asked. "Normally it's kidnappings and rape, not terrorism." There was a sense of morbid humour one picked up when working on a police force, so the comments that would normally start fistfights in any other's presence were just nodded along to by Hella. "It is. You noticed that too?" "I initially thought it was, since the Second Son started marshalling the other groups to start doing political agitation instead of terrorism. So we're just seeing the shield groups without the humans to outnumber them," John began. "But no, the numbers don't lie. We've seen a massive increase in the amount of shield terrorist groups." Hella nodded. "Some of the bars I frequent have gotten a lot more boisterous as of late. Do you think—" There was a ping, and the pair moved in sync to check their radios. A message from the chief of the Home Guard had come through. "The True Crown's investigation has advanced. Return to the office now." Warrant Officer Eudoxia Opsicki leaned back in her chair, closed her eyes, and began to scream internally. The ship that had been screwing with her systems by blasting off full scans had finally gotten in contact for something other than navigation. They had been separated from their convoy a while back, and were paranoid about pirates, hence all the scans. She generally couldn't blame them for the paranoia. She'd been noticing some odd and intermittent indications that someone had been phasing in and out to the far edge of the system. After the 7th time in 3 days, she stopped putting the Marines on alert, and since it had been going on for at least a month, she just sent off a message to the local garrison, asking for someone to come check it out. Maybe the ladies in patrol would be willing to help her out in that. Couldn't hurt to ask. The tusk pane of a cargo hauler was almost to the docking bay, and would be situated perfectly fine in a couple of hours. Then it could get filled up and get out of here, and she'd be able to go back to relaxing and enjoying her private media collection. "Attention on deck!" One of the pair Marines standing at the airlock to the bridge called out, as the lock cycled, allowing her entry to the room. Lieutenant Senior Grade Kevchak turned on her heel, snapped to attention, and crisply put her hand in her heart in salute. "At ease," Rochelle called out, allowing the sailors to resume their duties before some had finished standing to salute. "Lieutenant Kevchak, report." "Ma'am, all systems nominal, all navigation is within chart, and as of 10 minutes ago no faults are being reported among convoy vessels." LSG Kevchak reported in a crisp, formal voice, dropping her hand to stand at ease. "Very good, I have the deck," Rochelle replied with a nod, striding to her command position on the bridge. She would have loved to rest in a chair like many of her fellow admirals and captains, but the image wasn't right. A proper captain didn't rest, and so she would stand. Aye, ma'am, Kevjev replied, then turned to the ship's intercom. Captain Rochelle has the deck. The phase bubble, generated by overlapping and carefully tuned jump drives, created an interesting view surrounding the artificial viewports. As Rochelle brought up a set of terminal screens, they began to review what she missed while ensuring the goddess of bureaucracy was sated, and, when she had the time, sleeping. Captain, phage emergence in 1 hour, LSG Kevjet reported. Rochelle nodded. Very good. You will have command over emergence. I will review. I have command, you will review. Aye, ma'am. Aye. A pair of engineers floated around the cargo hauler that had just pulled in for refueling. Normally the job of automated drones, the fuel clamp on the hauler had been damaged, and so the normally painless job had become painful. Look, I'm just saying, but the latest that we picked up are a bit sketchy, an engineer wielding a repair clamp and EVA system said over the radio. The deep you're talking about? An engineer sitting back on solid ground, boots mag clamp firmly to the deck, replied. The repair clamp engineer shrugged in zero gravity before continuing her movement to the ship. They asked about our station filters. I mean, who does that? Folks who almost got gassed? Remember what they said? Yeah. That they got chased by pirates and the last station got hit hard. Look, all I'm saying is that it's a bit sketchy, all these questions they're asking. The dockside engineer sighed. Look, we can talk back and forth about what is sketchy and what is not, but seriously, you think Chief wouldn't have caught it if they were spooky? Yeah, Chief knows what's going on. Hey, something's up with this damage. A console at the docked engineer's side began to take note of life forms beginning to appear in places inside the cargo hauler they never were before. Slivers? Slivers? He of slender tail heard his bunkmates call out. Where is she? The steady steps of Venture's forced mechanical feet were nowhere to be heard, so maybe he could remain tucked away until he got called. Nobody looked inside the vents. Too small for the shield, too tight for the Gearschild. Probably the same for the humans. I've not seen her in the room. You sure about this? That was Milk asking. She was always so nice to him. I saw her coming in, maybe. I'll take a look in the vent. No, don't. Not like this. Not by him. He of slender tail curled up in the air duct at the back of the bunkroom. He had found it early on and had used it whenever things had become too much. He saw Ryan's boots fall in front of the vent. Hey, Slivers? You in there? We got some food from the mess hall. Venture saw you head out quickly. Are you okay? He sighed. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Warrant Officer Siava's little corner of the station was quiet for once. The group of Marines she was tasked with leading was still playing cards, but their hearts weren't in it. They were idly playing hands, slapping sets down and exchanging money, but they were silent the entire time. The warrant officer herself had stepped back into her armour after a few months of wearing civvies. Something felt wrong. It wasn't the new folks. They had happily kept to themselves. It was just, well, you didn't become a warrant officer in the Imperial Marines without seeing some shit. But something felt wrong. Warrant Officer Siava tapped her recently recharged power pack against her knee pad before slotting it shakily into the pulse carbine the veteran trooper had finished cleaning. Paranoia must have gotten to her. It took 3 tries to get the battery seated right. It was the 4th time she had inspected the Marine completement's meager rack of weapons in the past 2 days. One of her recruits leaned back in her chair, pinching the bridge of her nose, a losing hand obviously at fault. I swear, this headache is killing my concentration. Have you ever had a secret you really wanted to share but couldn't? Didn't want to? Shouldn't share? Slivers asked Cookie. The scent was curled up, sitting on her own tail and hunched over, like a stressed-out python. He knelt across from her, hands slick with engine grease, after having to pry off the vent cover to help the scent extract herself from the tiny crawl space. How she isn't crippled with claustrophobia, I'll never know, Ryan thought to himself, before idly plopping down across from his bunkmate. Yeah, I do. He twisted a fake engagement ring around his finger. It was a real ring, just not his. His grandfather had given it to him when he shipped off to the Naval Academy, popped it off his finger and handed it over. I know that look, kid. Knew plenty of guys with it back in my day. You'll be fine, but here, an excuse. It was the first time anyone had ever spoken of those people as something other than weird and wrong in his presence. It was the first time anyone in Ryan's family had called homosexuals anything other than satanic. It was the first time anyone had offhandedly mentioned Ryan, by extension, might not be destined for hell. Slivers looked up at him, eyes wide and hopeful, the normal dark slits widening almost like a cat's. "Do you mean that?" she asked. Ryan nodded. "We all have secrets. I think a few need to be held a bit tighter than others, but we've all got secrets. If you want, I can tell you mine." When Slivers had crawled out of the vent, Milk had vacated the room, or rather turned and began to relax up against the closed door. "Getting away from you two lovebirds," she said in a teasing voice, full of concern. She didn't knock on the door. They were still alone. No, I don't need to know," Slivers said, looking away. I just... "You just need to know I understand," Ryan says, in what he hoped came over the species divide as a comforting tone. Yes. I needed to know you understood," Slivers replied, bobbing her head. Ryan pushed forward. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. I wouldn't want to force you into anything you're unsure of." Instantly he winced because Slivers rolled back like she had been struck. She began to hiss in that melodic language of hers. He would occasionally hear her singing it. Ryan was a singer, and above that, someone with a decent ear. There were subtleties he could only barely pick up in the Sim's words, but he could hear her repeating a phrase over and over again. The Sim's tail twitched back and forth, rattling against the ground as the scales on her face began to stand on end. "Slivers?" he asked. She looked back at him, slitted blue eyes refusing to match into his own, and then spoke a single word in trade shill. "Certainty." Ryan cocked his head. She then took a deep breath, closed her eyes, released the breath and met Ryan Brooks, Joseph Kennedy's gaze. She then spoke. "I am not she. I am not matriarch. I am... Slivers took a breath. "I am not she of Slendertail. I am he of Slendertail." Ryan paused, rolling that statement over in his head for a moment to make sure he understood it right, and then smiled. "It is a pleasure to meet you, he of Slendertail." The two men smiled at each other. "And I'm just a usual soldier. I'm just cannon fodder. Our voices becoming louder, oh mothers and daughters." Warrant Officer Eudoxia Opsiki groaned as Systems Engineer Second-Rate Triev continued to sing over open mic. The song was old, going back to the First Unification War on ancient Shill. So old language has shifted, and the entire thing needed to be translated into trade Shill. It was well agreed the song was much lesser in this new form. Not that it stopped Triev from singing it at the top of her voice over her radio. "Triev, if you don't stop singing, I'm going to steal the airlock and leave you out there," Opsiki finally demanded, slamming her hand onto her radio button. "You're just jealous I spent time with a clever singer last leave," Triev replied. "And your singing hasn't improved. What's the status on those bolts?" Warrant Officer Opsiki leaned back into her chair, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Dealing with this single engineer was giving her the mother of all headaches, and her shift replacement was late, so she couldn't sign off and let this be someone else's problem. "Almost done. Give me a second. There, I've got some last bit of work to do before heading back, but it shouldn't take too long." "Well, good luck, Triev. I'll be here, waiting. If you see Calder, give her a swift kick to the clan for me. She's late to shift again." Triev laughed. "Will do, Command." The radio clicked shut, and Opsiki rolled her eyes. These long shifts must be wearing on her. She used to be able to go a dozen hours standing watch without a problem, but now dealing with this woman gave her one deep of a headache. She stood up and almost fell from her chair, legs going to jelly as she stabilized herself against the nearby console. "The deep is going on," she muttered out loud as the room swam. Her voice sounded so far away. She hit the deck right as the locked door, which should only be able to be opened from the inside, slid apart, revealing a figure. She was wearing a mask. "You're not Calder," Opsiki muttered, before her eyes flickered shut.